Hi there, this is Eshu. I'm the abbot here at Zenwest Buddhist Society. This Living Zen-podcast is just one of the many resources we've created at Zenwest to make Zen practice and training more available and accessible to people all over the world. Instructional videos, printable resources, and much, much more are also available on our website at www.zenwest.ca. If you're a regular listener, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email at office@zenwest.ca and let me know who you are, how you got started, and what brought you to Zen. Everything we make available in person and online at Zenwest is only possible because of the support of our members and associates, people like you. If the efforts of our community are making a difference in your life, I'd like to invite you to show your support and take part in making it happen by becoming an associate or member of the Zenwest Sangha. You can do this by clicking the Join Us tab on our website at www.zenwest.ca. Thank you for your support, and thanks for listening.
This Sunday, at our Sangha Sunday at the center in Suk, I began a talk about the word kan, or the concept of barriers. In our tradition of Rinzai Zen, one of the primary texts or resources that we use in our training is a book called the Muman Kan, or the No Gate Barrier. But what's most important for us to understand in our Zen practice is how we investigate, or how we grapple, or how we face the many barriers that we create in our lives. This idea of the no gate barrier, or the empty barrier, is one that's extremely important in our practice and in our lives. And I think that for newcomers, this is actually a very visceral, very easy to experience phenomena. When we come into any circumstance, we come in holding on to a whole bunch of ideas about who we are. We call this bunch of ideas and preferences and aversions all balled up together a self. We call it me. Whenever we talk about me, there's a whole bunch of things that we do and we don't do, that we like and we don't like, that we are good at and that we're terrible at. But of course, there's no objective discerning capacity to determine these things. These are all subjective choices that we ourselves make and that we ourselves fixate to. So when we come into a new environment, like a meditation hall, as soon as we step into the room, as soon as we're introduced to the form of practice, for example, let's put our hands together, palm to palm, and bow. As soon as we have this action, or as soon as we see this demonstrated, the I raises its head. Our self, how we hold ourselves, who it is that we think we are, stands up and says, well, how do I feel about that? Maybe I think it's great. Maybe I think it's strange and foreign. Maybe I think it's overly formal or uncomfortable, makes me feel odd. Maybe I think it makes me feel really great, but whatever. The request or the invitation to act arises, and we meet it first with a thought of ourselves. We separate from that invitation. We separate from that opening that's created, that activity that's arisen in our lives, and the activity of this universe And we look at it from the outside, from a subjective perspective. When we come into the meditation hall, one of the first things that we do at the beginning of the evening after we've taken up our seat is that we start this chanting practice. And the Dentsu sounds the bell and hums. It's another invitation, a call. The cosmos is calling, manifesting through the invitation of the Dentsu. And so how do we respond? We can respond wholeheartedly, with our whole bodies resonating in sound, coming together, meeting what's there. But most often, and particularly at the beginning, we're still separate. We still hold up the self to look and say, what's this? What's this strange sound? What are these weird people doing? Oh, this is chanting. Oh, I like chanting. I don't like chanting. I'll try chanting. I wonder what would happen if someone I knew walked in and saw me chanting. What are we going to chant? I wonder what this means. All of these self-concerns, concerns about ourself and our choices and our preferences arise very strongly. And as a result, we have this sort of anemic response to the invitation that life has put before us. The invitation is to bring our whole body into the activity of humming, but instead we sort of respond with a half body. We don't want to actually be heard because, goodness, we might do it wrong. We might be no good at it. We're concerned about how we're perceived. We're concerned about how we'll perform. We're concerned about not getting it just right, even if it's our first time. This is our barrier. I talk about this in the terms of a formal evening of practice, but is this not the case in every aspect of our lives, all the time, moment after moment, every day? In our work, when we're asked to do a task, do we engage with that whole body involvement, completely jumping into the task, whether it's composing that letter or lifting that box or speaking to that customer? Or do we hold out ourself first, create a space between what we call me inside and what we call that outside? Music is a wonderful place where we can meet this separation, where we can meet this self-imposed barrier. And anybody who plays music will certainly know what I'm speaking of. Anybody who does any kind of art will know what I'm speaking of. Dance, sure. Martial art, absolutely. Even making love will certainly know the difference between two individuals holding out their self-concerns and what this experience can be like when self is transcended and you receive and accept the invitation to immerse yourself completely in the activity that's unfolding before you, your life. An old Zen master said, if you can live like this, if you can go beyond this barrier, let this barrier drop away, then you will see with the same eyes and hear with the same ears as the ancient masters. But if you cannot cut off this thinking mind, if you cannot break through this barrier, then you will live your lives like ghosts clinging to bushes and weeds. And I think for many of us, this is how we've come to engage in our lives. And I think for many of us, this is why we've come to engage in Zen practice. We've found ourselves living our lives like ghosts. Our life is unfolding in front of us. Certainly we do our best to be living, alive, respirating, eating, shitting, all that. But I think for many of us, when we look at what's happening around us, we feel like we're passive participants. Things happen to us, rather than us being immersed, being dissolved, being a part of the unfolding activity of this cosmos. So we come to engage in this activity of zazen, sitting, meditation, Zen practice. And it's a very simple activity. We take the complexity of our lives and we break it down into a very simple series of activities, symbolic in some ways of the things that we do in our everyday lives. And we begin with the most simple of activities, which is just to sit. To sit still and breathe in a very healthy, strong, and upright posture. And our practice, what we are engaged in doing, is simply to be alive, to be living. As we sit, to be completely sitting, here, now, just this. Sounds so simple. Just be here and sit. But from the moment our butt hits the cushion, I think it becomes radiantly clear that to simply be here, to actively and presently engage with this simple activity of sitting, is difficult. Our minds wander here and there. Our minds are distracted by the slightest sound, the slightest variation in temperature, the slightest physical sensation or emotional uprising, and we're off, no longer here. This simple activity inviting us into the unfolding activity of our lives. And over again, we choose to be elsewhere. So, the Zen school offers this practice. We offer all kinds of teachings and activities and physical practices to bring us back. Invitation. Welcome to your life. Welcome to your life. Bells ringing. Time to bow. Time to engage in walking with this whole room together. You can't be elsewhere or mistake. You can't think elsewhere or mistake. Gap. Break. Space. Whoops. It's very challenging because as long as we're hanging on to this idea of needing to get it right every time, even if it's our first time, needing to look good all the time, even if we're completely new, Zen practice is a horror. There are innumerable regulations and rules and guidelines and aspects of form. Certainly no newcomer can get them all right. But we have to be willing to be caught. We have to be willing to let our warts and pimples show. Most of all, we have to be willing to see these things ourselves. Recognize that we've held up ourself, that we've created a space between who it is that we think we are and our life as it is unfolding continuously before us. Over and over again, this practice, formally and informally in our everyday lives, offers us invitation after invitation to simply be genuinely alive, to simply be genuinely awake in this moment, each unfolding moment of our lives. Thought moment after thought moment, we create this barrier between inside and outside, between subject and object, between what I call me and everything else. And it's not a bad thing. We need to know that I am different from the approaching bus or will be in pain. But we also have to be able to recognize that this thing that I call I is nothing fixed, nothing permanent, nothing lasting, and nothing genuinely separate from anything else in this vast cosmos. This thing that I call I is fundamentally empty. And this is what this teaching, Mu Mon Kan, the no gate barrier, empty barrier, that's what it's pointing to. It's not some ancient text. The gateless barrier is our continuous challenge, our continuous obstacle. But in the end, it's no obstacle at all, because we ourselves create it. This practice that we have, this wonderful formal practice, offers us a safe and stable environment to investigate this single point. To investigate, to observe, and to eventually let go of this barrier that we create for ourselves. Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.